The Alpha King's decree was etched in silver and blood. No female would ever draw blood in the great hunt. To him, women were breeders and prizes, never protectors. But as the horns sounded for the century's most brutal trial, he didn't realize his champion was already standing in the mud at his feet, wearing a man's name, masking a female scent, and carrying a lifetime of silent rage. Enyo stood ankle-deep in the freezing sludge of the training pits, scrubbing the gore from Alpha-rank boots until her fingernails bled. Around her, the air was thick with the scent of testosterone and iron. Highborn shifters strutted past, their fine furs brushed clean of the very dirt Enyo was forced to swallow. They heaved their heavy, notched spears toward her without a glance, the jagged metal slicing the air inches from her ear. Enyo flinched, the spray of mud hitting her square in the face. She looked up, a spark of defiance flickering in her silver eyes, but the warrior was already laughing, boasting of the weak females he'd left at home to weave his victory banners. "One day," Enyo whispered, her voice a low raspy promise. "One day the wolf you ignored will be the one at your throat." Before I begin this tale of blood, betrayal, and the bond that breaks all laws, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It encourages me, and you won't want to miss newer awesome content from me in the future. In the heart of the Frostclaw Kingdom, the air is thick with the sound of iron striking stone. It is the sound of a world closing shut. Alpha King Valerius stands before the high court, his silver hammer falling with the rhythmic weight of a death sentence. With every strike, he hammers the great decree into the palace gates, a law that bars every woman from the century trial, stripping them of rank and reducing them to shadows in their own homes. The king's voice booms over the assembly, codifying the two-stage brutal ritual that defines their species. To Valerius, the great hunt is the ultimate test of the man. A 3-day slaughter where alphas must use only steel and cunning to track and kill the mountain's most lethal predators. It is followed by the Great Run, the transition into wolf form where the pack participates in a frantic cross-country sprint through frozen ravines. Your performance in the run determined whether you were an alpha or a runt. By his decree, these holy acts of violence are now a male birthright. He declares women to be vessels for heirs, never wielders of blades. The women standing in the back of the crowd watch in a silence so heavy it threatens to choke the city. Enyo spends her days elbow-deep in the filth of the warrior barracks. She scours the blood of prey from floorboards and mends the heavy leather armor of men who view her as invisible. She is a runt, born into a lineage of legendary hunters, yet treated as a stain on their history because she lacks the hulking frame of her brothers. She is the girl who scrubs the boots that others wear to glory. She remembers how her world shattered on a Tuesday. The palace gates swung open, but instead of a prize, they brought a tragedy. Enyo's brother, the family's only provider and her only protector, was carried home on a makeshift litter. A high-ranking alpha, bored during a training exercise, crushed the boy's spine beneath a heavy shield, laughing as he stole the boy's ability to walk. The alpha offered no apology, only a toss of a copper coin into the mud. Now the family faces the slow, gnawing starvation of the slums. The alpha's prize, a fortune of gold and land awarded to the winner of the century's trial, is the only light left in their dark world. But that prize is locked behind a door Enyo is legally forbidden to open. Desperation drives her into the damp darkness of her cellar, a place where the king's law cannot reach. She moves with the focus of a predator preparing for a kill. She grabs a rusted hunting knife, its blade dull but cold. She grips the long dark hair that her mother used to braid with ribbons and shears it off in violent, jagged hacks. The raven-black locks fall to the dirt floor like dead leaves. She takes a strip of rough, unwashed linen and binds her chest flat, tightening the fabric until it bruises her ribs, forcing the air from her lungs until she carries the lean, hard silhouette of a boy. Finally, she reaches for a hidden vial of scent mask, a bitter, forbidden alchemy of crushed iron, hemlock, and wolfbane. She smears the stinging liquid over her pulse points, the back of her neck and her temples. The sharp metallic tang of the mixture drowns her female pheromones, replacing the scent of spring rain with the cold, intimidating musk of a young male shifter. She stands, her silver eyes reflecting the moonlight filtering through the cracks in the ceiling. Inyo is dead. In her place stands Elias, a ghost in the machine of the king's law, a silent rage wearing a man's face. She steps out into the night, ready to tear the decree from the gates with her bare hands. The Great Hunt's camp is a sprawling fortress of canvas and bone, carved into the jagged foothills of the Frostclaw Mountains. It is a place of raw, unchecked power where the air vibrates with the low-frequency growls of 500 alphas. Enyo walks through the main gates, her chin tucked low, her frame swallowed by a borrowed, oversized tunic that smells of wood smoke and old iron. As Elias, she is a ghost in a land of giants. Everywhere she looks, there are displays of dominance. Men the size of mountain bears sharpen axes with their bare hands, their eyes glowing with the hunger for the king's prize. They see Elias and they see prey. "Look at this," a scarred warrior sneers, his voice like grinding stones. He sticks out a massive mud-caked boot to trip her. Enyo catches her balance with a dancer's grace, her silver eyes flashing with a lethal heat she has to quickly bury beneath a mask of submission. The runt has lost his way to the nursery. The warrior laughs, glancing at his companions. "Hey, little bird, did you come here to hunt or to be the snack?" Enyo keeps her voice low, a raspy shadow of herself. "I'm here for the prize just like you." The laughter that follows is cruel and deafening. "The prize? You couldn't lift the king's sword, let alone wield it. Go back to the kitchens before the mountain air snaps those twig arms of yours." The bullying turns physical near the central fire pit, where the heat of the flames is matched only by the rising tempers of the alphas. 3 highborn warriors, sons of dukes and warlords, corner Elias against a stack of supply crates. They mock her scrawny limbs and the strange metallic tang of her scent mask. "Something about you is wrong, boy," the leader says, a tall alpha named Kale. He leans in close, sniffing the air. "You smell like a blacksmith's floor and a healer's cabinet. Where's your musk? Where's your wolf?" "I'm a late bloomer," Enyo mutters, trying to push past him. Kale grabs her by the front of her tunic, lifting her until her toes barely touch the mud. "A late bloomer? Or a coward hiding a defect? Let's see what you're binding under those rags." He reaches out to rip the herb-stained bandages from her neck, his fingers curling into the collar of her tunic. Enyo's heart hammers against her ribs with the desperate urge to drive her hidden dagger into his throat. "Let go." The voice is a low vibrational rumble that travels through the ground and stills the entire quad. Octavian, the crown prince, steps from the shadows of the command tent. He is a vision of golden authority, his chest bare beneath a fur mantle, his presence so heavy it makes the oxygen in the camp feel scarce. The bullies scatter like ash in a gale, Kale dropping Enyo so fast she stumbles. Octavian stops inches from her. He doesn't look at the warriors, he looks only at the boy on the ground. He reaches out, his massive warm hand settling on Enyo's shoulder to steady her, and the world simply stops. A spark, sharp, electric and forbidden, surges from his palm through her linen binding and straight into her soul. Enyo gasps, her breath hitching as a wave of heat washes over her. Octavian's amber eyes darken instantly, his pupils glowing wide as he stares into her silver gaze. "Are you hurt?" Octavian asks. His voice has lost its edge, replaced by a strange, unbidden softness that confuses even him. "I'm fine, Your Highness," Enyo whispers, pulling away from his touch. The loss of his contact feels like a sudden chill. Octavian's hand lingers in the air for a second too long. "You're small," he observes, his brow furrowed as if he's trying to solve a puzzle that doesn't want to be solved. "But your eyes, they don't look like the eyes of a runt. They look like the eyes of a storm." Enyo doesn't answer. She turns and retreats into the crowd, leaving the crown prince standing by the fire. Octavian watches her go, his blood beginning to boil with a confusion that borders on agony. He is the pinnacle of his lineage, yet his inner wolf is suddenly pacing his ribcage, howling for a stranger. He smells the iron and the hemlock, yet his wolf insists there is a sweetness underneath. Something like jasmine, something like the first rain of spring. Who is he? Octavian mutters to the empty air. He is the future king, meant to choose a highborn bride, yet he is captivated by a nameless boy who represents everything his father's law forbids. He stands still, his fists clenched, realizing for the first time that his heart is a traitor. The training grounds tonight are a graveyard of moonlight and discarded targets. Enyo stands alone, her fingers white-knuckled around the grip of a heavy yew bough. She is a creature of the deep forest, a woman who has spent a decade stalking the silent pines, dropping stags from 100 paces with a single fluid breath. She is a master of the wind, yet as the heavy tread of Octavian's boots vibrates through the soil, she forces her body to forget. She intentionally drops her elbow. She fakes a shallow, trembling draw, letting the arrow wobble in the notch like a leaf in a gale. Octavian emerges from the darkness, his presence a heavy weight that shifts the very gravity of the clearing. He watches Elias for a moment, his brow furrowed in a mixture of pity and a strange magnetic fascination. "Your grip is too tight, Elias," Octavian says, his voice a low, honeyed rumble. "You're fighting the wood. The bough is an extension of your arm, not an enemy." Enyo wipes fake sweat from her brow, keeping her silver eyes lowered. "It's heavy, Your Highness. I'm not built like the others." "Strength is a lie told by men who lack focus," Octavian murmurs. He steps into her personal space, his warmth hitting her like a physical blow. He moves behind her, his broad chest pressing against her bound back. He reaches around her, his massive, calloused hands sliding over her smaller ones. The contact is electric. A surge of raw, ancient power snaps between their skin, making Enyo's breath catch in her throat. Octavian's fingers linger on her wrists, his pulse thrumming against hers in a rhythmic, frantic demand. He guides her hands, his breath hot against the shell of her ear as he pulls the string back. "Breathe with the draw," he whispers. "The target is already yours. You just have to let the world fall away." Enyo closes her eyes, her head tilting back slightly against his shoulder. For a heartbeat she forgets the disguise. She forgets the king's law. There is only the scent of Octavian, sandalwood and mountain air, and the way his heart beats in perfect time with her own. "You're shaking," Octavian observes, his voice dropping to a private, dangerous register. "The wind is cold," she lies, her voice a mere breath. "The wind is still, Elias," he counters, his grip tightening just a fraction. "Why is your heart trying to escape your chest?" The sky breaks without warning, a sudden violent mountain deluge that turns the training ground into a river of mud. They scramble for the shelter of a nearby stone equipment shed, the air suddenly thick with the smell of wet earth and damp leather. They stand inches apart in the cramped darkness, their breath mingling in the cold air. Enyo wipes the rain from her face, her hands trembling. She is so focused on the way Octavian's wet tunic clings to his heavy muscles that she fails to notice the danger. The rain is a relentless thief. It is washing away the bitter hemlock and the iron gall ink she used to bury her identity. The atmosphere in the shed shifts. Octavian's amber eyes suddenly glow with a predatory light. His nostrils flare, his wolf surging to the surface with a ferocity that makes his pupils blow wide. The sharp, metallic tang of Elias is dissolving, replaced by something intoxicating. It is the scent of crushed jasmine and the first sweet rain of spring, a pure female pheromone that hits Octavian with the force of a physical strike. He steps closer, pinning her against the rough stone wall. He hovers his face inches from her neck, his mind spinning into a chaotic whirlpool of desire and absolute confusion. "What is that?" Octavian growls, his voice vibrating deep in his chest. "What is what, my prince?" Enyo whispers, her back pressing into the cold stone. "That scent," he says, his nose grazing the pulse point at her throat. "It's not blood. It's not iron. It's a memory I haven't had yet." He looks at her then, his gaze searching her silver eyes with an intensity that feels like a bearing of souls. "Who are you, Elias? Why does my wolf want to tear down this whole camp just to keep you in the dark?" Enyo stares up at him, the truth screaming behind her teeth. "I'm just a runt, Octavian. A shadow you should stop chasing." "I've never been good at letting shadows go," he murmurs, his hand rising to cup her jaw, his thumb lingering on her bottom lip just a second too long. The question hangs in the air, unanswered and explosive, as the rain continues to wash away the only lie keeping her alive. The hierarchy of the camp is a brutal, starving thing. At mealtime, the highborn alphas gorge themselves on roasted boar, leaving nothing but gristle and cracked bones for the runts at the edge of the fire. Enyo sits in the shadows, her stomach twisting into a knot of cold hunger as she watches Kale and his sycophants toast to their own greatness. A shadow falls over her, smelling of expensive leather and mountain pine. Octavian stands there, silhouetted by the firelight, holding a thick slab of warm bread and a portion of venison wrapped in a clean cloth. He ignores the stunned silence of his generals and drops into the mud beside her. "The strong only stay strong if the pack is fed, Elias," Octavian says, his voice a low, private murmur. Enyo stares at the food, then at him. "Your father's decree says the weak should learn to scavenge." Octavian's jaw tightens. "My father is a king. I am a man. Eat." As she eats, the silence between them softens into something rare in this camp. A friendship. They talk in hushed tones as the fire dies down. Octavian speaks of a childhood spent under the crushing weight of a crown, of a mother who was a memory of silk and a father who was a wall of stone. Enyo tells him of the forest, skirting the truth of her gender but sharing the soul of her life. She speaks of the way the moss feels underfoot at dawn and the secret language of the wind in the pines. For the first time, Octavian laughs, a genuine golden sound that makes Enyo's heart ache with the weight of her lie. The preliminary hunt turns into a nightmare when the mountain sky bruises purple and black. A flash flood roars down the ravine, cutting the competitors off from the main camp. In the chaos, Octavian takes a jagged fall, a limestone ledge slicing a deep, weeping gash across his thigh. Through the blinding sheets of rain, Enyo finds him. She hauls the massive prince into a narrow, hidden cave, her small frame straining under his weight until they collapse onto the dry sand at the back of the cavern. The lightning illuminates his face, pale and tight with pain. "Leave me, Elias," he grunts, clutching his leg. The scent of blood will bring the shadow cats. Be quiet, Enyo snaps, her voice shifting into the authoritative tone of a master hunter. She tears a strip from her oversized tunic, her heart stopping as she realizes how close she is to exposing her bindings, and begins to work. She tends to his wound with a tenderness that leaves Octavian breathless. Her fingers move with a healer's precision, cleaning the dirt from the jagged tear. Octavian watches her, his amber eyes glowing with a predatory intensity in the dark. He sees the way her silver eyes reflect the lightning, not with fear but with a fierce, protective focus. "Where did a runt learn to stitch a prince's leg?" he asks, his voice strained. "The forest doesn't care about titles," she whispers. "It only cares if you can stop the bleeding." The suddenly temperature plunges as the storm settles into a steady, freezing roar. Hypothermia is a predator that doesn't care about the king's law. They are forced together in the smallest corner of the cave, huddling for survival. Octavian pulls her against him, his massive arms wrapping around her, his heat acting as a furnace against the damp chill. "Elias," Octavian whispers into the darkness, his voice thick with a confusion he can no longer suppress. "My father tells me that a mate is a political match. A female chosen for her bloodline, her womb and her docility. But I look at you, a scrawny boy from the mud, and I feel a tether. A bond that pulls at my very marrow. I have never felt this for a woman. I have never felt this for anyone." Enyo freezes, her back against his chest. The truth sits on her tongue, heavy and sweet. She wants to turn around, to take his hand and place it over the heart he thinks belongs to a boy. She wants to tell him she is the woman his wolf has been howling for since the moment they met. "Octavian, I'm not who you think I am," she starts, her voice breaking. "Don't," he says softly, his forehead resting against the back of her head. "Whatever this is, it's a madness. It's a sickness. But it's the only thing in this camp that makes me feel like more than a weapon for my father's war." "You would hate the truth," she whispers. "I doubt that," he murmurs, his grip tightening just a fraction. "I think the truth is the only thing I've ever wanted." They fall into a fitful sleep, pressed back to back, their spines forming a single line of heat. The sexual tension in the cave is a physical weight, a wire pulled so tight it hums. Octavian lies awake for hours, his wolf pacing his mind, intoxicated by the fading scent of jasmine and spring rain that the damp air has brought to the surface. He is a prince falling for a shadow, and Enyo is a hunter falling for her king, both of them drowning in a love that could see them executed before the sun rises. The final 24 hours of the great hunt arrive with a sky the color of a bruised lung. Deep in the heart-wrought woods, the temperature plummets as the shadow wolf emerges. A creature of nightmare, twice the size of a royal carriage with fur like shifting smoke and eyes of liquid void. One by one the invincible alphas fall. Kale, the man who mocked Elias for weeks, drops his spear and turns to run, his face a mask of terror. "It's not a beast. It's a demon," he screams, his voice cutting short as the forest shadows swallow him and his warriors whole. Octavian stands alone in the center of the clearing, his silver blade raised, his breath coming in ragged, freezing gasps. He is a god of war, but even gods bleed. The beast lunges, a blur of obsidian muscle. Its claws shear through Octavian's shoulder armor, pinning the crown prince to the frozen earth. "Is this it?" Octavian growls, staring into the void of the creature's maw. "The end of the line?" Just as the shadow wolf opens its jaws to deliver the killing blow, a blur of motion streaks from the canopy above. Enyo doesn't use the brute strength of a man. She uses the lethal whipcord speed of a survivor. She is a phantom in the mud, dancing between the beast's massive limbs with a grace that defies gravity. She drives her bone-handled dagger into the creature's throat, twisting the blade with a lifetime of silent, suppressed rage. "For my brother," she whispers, her voice a lethal rasp as she carves through the shadow flesh. As the shadow wolf collapses, its final death throes send a spray of obsidian blood across the clearing. Enyo stumbles back, gasping for air. Her borrowed, oversized armor is shredded to ribbons. The heavy leather chest piece, sliced by the beast's claws, falls away in useless pieces. Her jagged black hair, once hidden tightly under a cowl, spills across her shoulders in the wind. The silence that follows is more deafening than the beast's roar. The remaining warriors emerge from the trees, their eyes widening as the truth bears itself in the light. Enyo stands before them, the linen bindings around her chest torn and soaked in blood, her silhouette unmistakably feminine. The mountain wind carries the scent. The scent mask is gone, washed away by the heat of battle. In its place, the intoxicating fragrance of jasmine and spring rain explodes across the clearing. It is the scent of a fated mate, a pull so ancient it makes the surviving alphas drop to their knees in instinctive reverence. The thud of heavy hooves announces the arrival of Alpha King Valerius. He surveys the carnage, the dead monster, the cowering alphas, and the girl standing in the center of it all. His face contorts into a mask of pure, unadulterated outrage. "Treason!" Valerius bellows, his voice shaking the frost from the trees. "A female has stained the great hunt. She has mocked the law of the claw and seduced the crown prince with her deception. Guards, take her. Her head will sit upon the gates before the moon sets." The royal guard moves forward, spears leveled at Enyo's throat. She stands her ground, her silver eyes burning. "I won your hunt, king. I killed the beast your men fled from. Is the law of the claw about strength, or is it just about fear?" "Silence, whelp!" Valerius roars. But a wall of golden light stops the guards in their tracks. Octavian staggers to his feet, his silver blade singing as it clears its scabbard. He moves to stand in front of Enyo, shielding her with his massive frame. He doesn't look at the guards. He looks directly at his father, his eyes glowing with the fierce, protective light of a bond that cannot be broken. "Step back, Octavian," the king warns, his hand on his own sword. "She's a criminal. She is a lie." "She is the champion you asked for," Octavian growls, the sound vibrating through the very earth. "She did what your mighty warriors could not. She saved your heir, and she carries the scent the moon gave to me before I was born. You call her a lie, but she is the only truth I have ever seen in this kingdom." "You would defy your king for a servant girl?" Valerius asks, his voice trembling with shock. "I would defy the gods for her," Octavian counters, raising his blade to his father's throat. "Step aside, father, or lose the only son you have left. I will burn this palace to the ground and build a new one on its ashes before I let you touch my mate. The decree ends today. Or your lineage does." The court stands paralyzed. The Alpha King stares at his son, seeing a man he no longer recognizes. A true king who chooses his pack over his pride. Enyo stands at Octavian's back, her hand resting on his wounded shoulder, the runt, who became a queen, waiting for the world to decide if it is ready for the revolution she has ignited. The adrenaline of the hunt still hums in the air, a thick, electric charge that follows them into the heavy silence of the royal suite. The doors slam shut, muffling the chaos of the court below. Octavian stalks across the room, his breathing heavy, his golden eyes fixed on the woman who spent weeks living as his shadow. Enyo stands by the hearth, the firelight catching the sharp edges of her face. She has shed the shredded remains of her Elias tunic, replaced now by a simple linen wrap that barely hides the deep bruises and the obsidian blood of the shadow wolf. She is vulnerable, yet she stands with the spine of a conqueror. Octavian closes the distance in 2 strides. He pins her against the stone wall, his large hands flat against the masonry on either side of her head, trapping her in the heat of his body. The scent of jasmine and spring rain is a tidal wave now, drowning the smell of the palace stone. I thought I was losing my mind, Octavian growls, his voice a low, gravelly vibration that travels straight into Enyo's chest. I thought my wolf had turned on me, hunting a boy who shouldn't have been mine. Every time I touched your shoulder, every time I caught a ghost of your scent in the rain, I felt my sanity slipping away. Elias, my wolf knew. He was screaming for you the whole time. Enyo looks up at him, her silver eyes defiant even now. You were falling for a lie, Octavian. I am the woman the decree was meant to crush. I am the servant who stole your bread and mocked your laws. Why aren't you calling the guards? Because the guards are afraid of you, Octavian whispers, his face inches from hers. And because I am more afraid of living another day without knowing the woman who saved my life. You played the runt, but you fought like a god. Why did you hide it? Why did you let them treat you like dirt? Because in your father's world, a woman with a blade is a threat to the natural order, she spat, her voice trembling with years of suppressed fury. I didn't want to be a prize, Octavian. I wanted to be the hunter. The laws are ashes, Octavian murmurs, his gaze dropping to her lips. The only truth left is the way my blood roars when you're near. Tonight was the hunt of steel, but tomorrow is the run of the pack. You've proven your worth with a blade. Now I want to see the wolf that carries your soul. He claims her mouth with a hunger that has been building since that first spark in the mud. The kiss is a collision of fire and ice, a heavy, steamy surrender that shatters the last of Enyo's defenses. It is the end of the hiding and the birth of a mate. Octavian's hands slide into her jagged black hair, pulling her closer until there is no air left between them. In this moment the bond flares to life, a golden cord of light that binds their fates together so tightly that even death would have to ask permission to separate them. We run at dawn, he whispers against her skin. And for the first time in a century, a female will lead the pack. The sun rises over the Frostclaw Mountains, casting long, triumphant shadows across the palace square. But this morning is different. The bells of the city ring with a new, frantic rhythm. The run, the sacred second half of the trial where shifters take their wolf forms, is usually a male-only display of dominance. But as the palace gates swing open, the crowd gasps. Enyo and Octavian step out onto the great balcony. Enyo wears her dark hunting leathers, her jaw set in silver. Beside her, Octavian holds a new scroll, the ink still wet. My father's kingdom was built on the fear of what women could become. Octavian's voice booms, amplified by his alpha command. But my kingdom will be built on the truth of what they are. The law of the claw is dead. From this breath forward, the hunt belongs to the swift. The run belongs to the brave. Whether they carry the scent of the pine or the scent of the rose, they are Frostclaw. They are the pack. He takes the silver circlet, the crown of the Luna, and places it upon Enyo's jagged black hair. It sits in stark contrast to her dark hunting leathers and the dried obsidian blood on her cheeks. You are no longer a shadow, Enyo, he whispers so only she can hear. You are the light this kingdom has been starving for. Enyo looks out over the bowing warriors, her silver eyes glowing with the fierce, quiet triumph of a girl who was meant to be a prize but chose to be a predator. She doesn't need to mask her scent anymore. She doesn't need to bind her chest. She stands beside her king, her hand resting on the hilt of the dagger that saved him, ready to lead the first run where every wolf, male and female, will finally be free to howl at the moon. Thank you so much for staying till the end. I am Luna, the writer behind the story of the Frostclaw Kingdom. If you felt the spark between Octavian and Enyo, and you're ready for more tales of fated mates and broken laws. Please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a chapter. Before you go, I want to know who is here with me today. Where are you viewing from? Drop your location in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next story.